The first form of televised media we watch as kids tends to be made specifically for kids. The major purpose of this children's media is to instill pro-social values and teach kids what behaviors are acceptable or not. Children are the future, so children's media can be seen as a mechanism for influencing the future and shaping their behavior. Before the youth are influenced by TikTok, they're influenced by PBS or whatever. At best, children's media can instill a love of learning, foster empathy for and solidarity with your fellow humans, build social skills, emphasize the interdependence between individuals and the collective, and teach values like love, care, creativity, patience, and honesty. At its worst, however, children's media can glorify values that are definitely not pro-social, like winning at all costs, valuing the individual above the collective, labeling certain people as inherently evil and others as inherently good due to some innate quality of theirs, using violence to get what you want, and the like. Basically all the things glorified in Harry Potter, but that's not what we're talking about today. You can tell a lot about what a particular culture values through the values promoted in its children's media, so today I wanted to talk about Soviet children's cartoons, specifically how they were used as a vehicle for instilling socialist values and morality in kids and even adults. There's like a siren outside my apartment, can you hear that? We can't realistically talk about what values every single Soviet cartoon conveys, because that would be a lot, so I've selected a few super popular ones that also happen to be my personal favorites that I grew up with, but that were also super popular and influential in the Soviet Union and still are to this day in former Soviet countries. And pretty much all of these have been rebooted as either live-action films or animated TV series in recent years, so we can safely say they're still extremely popular. 1. Cheburashka and the transformative power of labor. This brings us to our first Soviet animated short film. If you know anything about the Soviet Union, you've probably seen this adorable fuzzy little Soviet icon. There are 4 Soviet animated short films that feature Cheburashka, and also a Russian 2023 live-action reboot with a CGI Cheburashka. But we're just gonna focus on the stop-motion animated short film called Cheburashka, first released in 1971, produced by Soyuz Multfilm, and directed by Roman Kachanov. The film starts off with Crocodile Gena, or Gena the crocodile, singing a banger of a song about his birthday. Cheburashka arrives with a gift for Gena. Then a group of pioneers marches past them on their way to plant some trees. Cheburashka says that he wishes he could walk like them, and Gena says, you know, you have to do a lot of good to become a pioneer. The Pioneers were a youth organization in the Soviet Union in which young people ages 9 to 14 learned and propagated communist ideology and principles and engaged in socially useful work, like collecting scrap metal, planting trees, and picking up trash. They were seen as the youngest builders of communism, and their slogan was "Always Ready," or "Всегда готов." They also got cute little Lenin pins with the slogan and cool red scarves. Although by the end of the USSR's existence, becoming a member of the Young Pioneers became more of a formality than anything else, and pretty much every kid became a pioneer, the original Young Pioneers organization, founded in 1922, was instrumental in the USSR's liquidation of illiteracy campaign that ultimately brought near full literacy to the Soviet Union. For reference, at the time of the October Revolution in 1917, about 37.9% of males and 12.5% of females ages 7 and older were literate. That's not a lot of people. By December 1926, 65.4% of males and 36.7% of females above 7 were literate, and by the 1960s, nearly everyone in the USSR was literate. Making people literate also isn't just a factor of time passing and more people magically deciding to read. It's an active process that requires struggle, which is why in the capitalist US, literacy rates are declining and are now at about 79%, which should really contextualize how amazing it was that the USSR achieved nearly full literacy in the 1960s, especially among a population that was mostly illiterate just 40 years prior. That's incredible. If you're not impressed, you're probably an anti-communist. Also, during World War II, when the Soviets were fighting the Nazis, pioneers collected money for defense, helped out at factories and collective farms, helped take care of the wounded, and many other helpful things, with some even fighting the enemy on the battlefield or becoming members of partisan detachments. Anyway, those are the pioneers that Crocodile Gena and Cheburashka think are so cool. Yeah, these pioneers are child communists, and they're cool specifically because they are so helpful to their community. They're not just individually cool guys that are cool because of some innate quality that they have. They're cool because they're a unit that works together to make things better for everyone in the community. They're cool because they embody working class solidarity. Gena opens his gift from Cheburashka, a small helicopter. Cheburashka starts winding it up wrong, and Gena shows him how to do it correctly, but Cheburashka flies away because he's so tiny and cute and, like, a little bit incompetent. And he lands right next to the pioneers themselves, who are working on building a birdhouse. Gena shows up, and they ask to join the pioneers, and the pioneers are like, can you make birdhouses? Have you ever made fires? Can you march? And Gena and Cheburashka have done none of those things, so the pioneers are like, see, it's too early, and we only take the best. Cheburashka is like, well, we'll become the best, and the pioneers are like, okay, then come back, once you're the best. I love how the pioneers don't outright reject them. They're not like, we can't take the likes of you because you're a crocodile and you're a weird fuzzy thing, so obviously you have no place in the pioneers. No, who they are doesn't matter. It's what they can do that matters, and they can't really do much yet. So instead, the pioneers basically say, you are not qualified yet, but come back later. It's very wholesome and shows us, the viewers, that getting rejected now doesn't mean you'll be rejected forever. Just because you can't do a thing right now doesn't mean you're doomed to not be able to do the thing. It just means that you're not there yet. And I think that's a great message, honestly. In the next scene, Gena and Cheburashka attempt to build a birdhouse, and it's kind of janky. Gena is like, nothing is working, and Cheburashka is like, don't worry, we'll rest and then try again. As Gena is jamming on his accordion, he sees a kid climbing up a fire escape and chasing a butterfly. Gena saves this kid from falling off a balcony and tells him to not climb fire escapes. Then the kid falls into a manhole, which Gena saves him from again, and he's like, what are you kids doing? Do you not have anything better to do? And they're like, yeah, no, we literally don't have anything better to do. First, Gena is like, okay, what if we turn this thing into a house and then gets electrocuted because this thing is an electrical box? And he's like, okay, let's not do that actually. So he leaves and then comes back with equipment for building a playground for these kids. The pioneers see Gena working and ask if they can join, but he's like, no, you guys are so busy, and you let the jackhammer go, which he says right after letting the jackhammer go himself. Cheburashka is like, now they'll never take us. Then, as Gena and Cheburashka are jamming again, a police officer shows up and is like, Citizen Gena, did you steal the compressor? Gena is like, yeah, I did. And the cop is like, what were you planning on using it for? And Gena and Cheburashka are like, oh, we already used it. We built a playground for the kids. The officer takes a look at the playground and is like, ha, good job. Don't worry about the compressor. We'll deal with it ourselves. And then takes it and leaves. Zero problems. Totally chill. While in capitalist countries like the United States, the police force sides with the bourgeoisie, the ruling class, to protect private property like 100% of the time, this dynamic can't possibly exist in a country with no private property, like the USSR. Private property being property that an individual or corporation, who is an individual in a lot of places because of corporate personhood, owns that they earn a profit from owning, such as a factory, a mine, or an apartment complex, for example. The existence of private property necessitates the exploitation of the working class, because profits are just unpaid wages. The USSR, like any socialist nation, only had personal property, like your personal house or toothbrush, and public property. So this officer is here to protect public property that probably anyone can use if they go through the appropriate channels, and once he sees that this property has been put to good use, he can't even be mad that Gena didn't go through the official channels to rent the compressor. So basically, this scene could never be recreated in a capitalist nation because it simply would not make sense. If you steal a compressor from Home Depot or some other private business in the United States and use it to build something for the good of your community under capitalism, you're gonna be in trouble, and you probably need a permit for that anyway. But as we learn in this scene, under socialism, the public good comes above all else, even if you end up committing a little bit of theft accidentally along the way. That's fine, it was for the good of society, so who cares that you accidentally went about it the wrong way. Then Gena and Cheburashka see the pioneers marching with signs saying that they're collecting scrap metal, and they go to collect some. Gena, being a crocodile, is able to dive to get a bunch of scrap metal from a port, including a ship's anchor, which is kind of funny. They bring this scrap metal to the pioneers, who are super happy about it and say they'll be guaranteed first place now. As Gena and Cheburashka go to leave, the pioneers are like, wait, no, we'll accept you in our troop. Gena is like, but we don't know how to march. And the pioneers are like, that doesn't matter. Look at how much good you've done. We'll teach you how to march. And they all march off together. So cute. If you were a kid watching Cheburashka, what would it teach you? Probably that the pioneers are some of the coolest people and that you should totally want to join them so you can help your community too, because the coolest thing you can do is helping others. Cheburashka also teaches us about the transformative power of labor. At the beginning, Gena and Cheburashka have no clue what they're doing and, if anything, are kind of incompetent. They just know that they want to be pioneers and help others, but they get gently rejected because they're kind of incompetent. However, once there's an opportunity for them to help their community by building a playground so these rowdy kids stop falling out of windows and into manholes, they take it. Even though it starts off kind of janky and Gienah ends up electrocuted and has a run-in with law enforcement that's honestly pretty chill, all things considered, it is through laboring for the common good that Gienah and Cheburashka build up the skills to be able to join the pioneers. It takes some trial and error, but they ultimately build a fully functioning playground, collect scrap metal, and just generally do a lot of good in this short 19-minute film. They transform the world via their own labor and are also transformed by laboring for the better. Very cute, very wholesome, we love that. 2. Bremenskие музыканты and working class liberation. Brementown Musicians, or Bremenskие музыканты, is a 1969 short animated musical film produced by Soyuz Multfilm and directed by Inessa Kovalevskaya based on the Brothers Grimm fairy tale, Town Musicians of Bremen. It's basically 20 minutes straight of banger songs with a rock and roll inspired sound combined with amazing visuals featuring themes like rejection of the ruling class, liberation from oppression, and solidarity and friendship. Bremenskие музыканты features 4 singing animals, a rooster, a donkey, a dog, and a cat, who, along with their troubadour friend, are traveling musicians. When these traveling musicians stop by the king's town, the troubadour sees the king's daughter while performing and they fall in love. But right after this beautiful moment, the musicians fall right into the king's castle, breaking a window and get kicked out of town. Afterwards, while the traveling musicians are trying to find a place to stay for the night, the troubadour and the princess sing about how they miss each other. Then our traveling quintet stumbles upon a quartet of robbers who are so aesthetically cool, and they're dancing in their little cabin and drinking and singing all about how tomorrow they're gonna rob the king of his copious amounts of money, and heavily implying that they're also gonna take care of him. Our traveling musicians see this and scare the robbers out of their home by having the animals pop their heads into their windows and making the wrong animal sounds. And then they all stack themselves on top of the donkey with a sheet on top to look like a scary supernatural being, and the robbers run off. The next day, the traveling musicians basically do what the robbers planned on doing, but instead of robbing the king, they just scare him and his guard, and then kidnap the king and tie him to a tree. Which is honestly a better fate than being robbed, I guess. The troubadour then shows up, out of disguise now, singing about how he misses the princess and wishes the king would let him be with her, and the king is like, "Oh my god, please help me, I'm tied to a tree!" I mean, he doesn't literally say that, he doesn't actually have any lines in this, but that's kind of what's happening. The troubadour pretends to beat up the robbers inside the cabin, but actually, it's our traveling musician friends just being wild and having the zoomies and throwing laundry out the window and doing cartwheels. Then the traveling musicians come out and rescue the king, even though this was their plan all along. The king takes them to the palace, the princess meets them, and they all go inside the palace, except the animals, who are locked out. The king throws a ball where the troubadour teaches everyone how to play instruments and dance in like a cool way and not like a boring monarchy type way, because the working class is cooler. That's what I'm learning from this. The working class is cooler than the monarchy. In the morning, the rooster calls for the troubadour, but he doesn't come out, so the animal friends go off on their way, singing the same song about friendship from the beginning, but in a sad way because their friend has abandoned them. Or did he? He and the princess actually leave the palace together, run after them, and then hop on the wagon with the troubadour announcing that he's there by singing the next verse of the song. Clearly he's got amazing lung capacity because he was able to belt that out after all that running. Very impressive. Also, this scene makes me cry like every time. Oh my god, I love friendship. Though this story is based off of source material that literally involves just the 4 animals with no troubadour, princess, or king, scaring off robbers and then stealing and living in their cottage after beating them up, Bremenskие музыканты puts a socialist twist on the original Brothers Grimm fairy tale by not having the characters permanently seize the robbers' home, by making the king more of an antagonist than the robbers, who are really more of an inconvenience, but also a source of inspiration for the traveling musician's sneaky ploy, and who have one of the best songs in the entire film. And by showing us that we shouldn't aspire to join the ruling class because friendship and solidarity are far more important. At the end, the animals think their friend has betrayed them and chosen a life of luxury, balls, and palaces as part of the monarchy, but instead, the troubadour pleasantly surprises them by choosing his old life and even saving the princess from the boredom of palace life. Consensually, of course. She literally sings a song about how she wants to be free from the palace. She doesn't get kidnapped or anything. They're in cahoots, it's fine. The troubadour does not want to join the ruling class. He wants friendship, solidarity, and liberation, which to him and his friends means traveling from town to town, bringing joy and happiness to people via their music. They find liberation through sharing their artistry with the masses rather than through aspiring to join the ruling class, which is often sold to us as the only means of attaining liberation in a society that runs off of exploitation. Like, under capitalism, we're often taught that the only way to be free is to become a capitalist. Invest in some real estate, buy some stocks, start your own business, then you won't have to worry about being exploited. But in Bremenskие Музыканты, the princess, who was already in a privileged position, free from exploitation as part of the ruling class, and who can basically have whatever she wants in life as the daughter of a wealthy king, rejects her ruling class lifestyle and chooses to run off with the traveling musicians because she knows that simply being part of the ruling class is not liberation. I mean, the very first song in Bremenskие Музыканты basically lets us know the ideology of this film. The lyrics are all about how there's nothing better than being with friends, how friendship eases your troubles, how palaces may be tempting, but they'll never replace freedom, and how they're happy to live the way they do. Traveling together, bringing laughter and joy to people through their art, and simply being in nature. The traveling musician's vision is one that mirrors socialist aspirations for a better world of equality, justice, and shared prosperity, free from exploitation. They don't want to be beholden to some unelected king. They want to live life according to their own values on their own terms. And if that requires them to scare some robbers and borrow their house for a night so they can scare the king while disguised as robbers and then save him to get closer to the princess, well, that's fine too. As a working class person, you're allowed to mess with the ruling class like that once in a while as a treat. Maybe more than once in a while. I'm not telling you how to live your life, I'm just saying what Bremenskие Музыканты has taught me. 3. Простоквашино, autonomy and solidarity. This brings us to our final Soviet cartoon. Troya is Простоквашино, or 3 from Простоквашино. Простоквашино? How do you say that Englishly? I don't know. I'll just call it Простоквашино. Простоквашино is a 1978 short animated film directed by Vladimir Popov and produced by, you guessed it, Союзмультфильм. It starts off with Dядя Fyodor, or Uncle Fyodor, who is in fact a child and not anyone's uncle, walking through his apartment complex stairwell while eating a sandwich. Matroskin, an adorable striped cat, tells him that he's eating that sandwich wrong and needs to flip it upside down so that the meat is on the bottom and touches your tongue when you bite into it. Iconic, honestly. After talking for a bit, Uncle Fyodor shares some of his sandwich with Matroskin and invites him to live with him. Unfortunately, Uncle Fyodor's extremely overworked and stressed out mom does not want to keep a cat, stating that they're useless, unlike the painting on her wall that covers a giant hole in the wall. So Fyodor and Matroskin run off and move to the countryside. Once they make it to Простоквашино, they run into a dog named Sharik, who asks to live with them and says he'll protect everything for them. They don't actually have a place to live yet, but Sharik tells them that there's actually an empty house that they can stay in, and they let him come live with them. They move into the house, which has a sign that literally says, "Free house, whoever wants can live here," because landlords don't exist under socialism, and they clean the place up. As they're cleaning, some bloke shows up and asks whose boy Uncle Fyodor is, and where he came from. Uncle Fyodor says, "I'm not anyone's, I'm my own boy, I'm here from the city." And the bloke is like, "That's impossible, children have to be someone's." Of course, Matroskin and Sharik are real friends and back up their friend. Matroskin is like, "I'm my own cat," and Sharik is like, "I'm my own dog." So, of course, Fyodor is his own boy. And then Matroskin is like, "Why do you care? Are you from the police?" Big boot. Such an icon. I love him. Then we learn that this bloke is Mailman Pechkin, or Почтальон Pechkin, and he needs to know who everyone is so he can deliver mail. Also, the fact that Fyodor says that he's his own boy is not only kind of funny, but also very much in line with socialist values. For example, Cuba's 2022 Family Code, which is the most progressive in the entire world, and which was created via participatory democracy and passed with about 67% of the vote, and which legalized gay marriage and gave more rights to queer and disabled people. We love to see it. Wahoo! Anyway, Cuba's Family Code emphasizes the concept of parental responsibility over parental custody, stating that parents are required to be respectful of the dignity and physical and mental integrity of children and adolescents. It also declares that parents should give maturing offspring more autonomy over their own lives. Children are autonomous individuals with their own goals, dreams, identities, perspectives, and interests, rather than an extension of their parents or a tool to be exploited. And socialists understand and respect that, which is also why one of the most famous child psychologists that you probably ever heard of, Vygotsky, or Lev Vygotsky, was a Marxist who used dialectical materialism as a foundational basis for his theories of childhood development, but we're not going to get into that right now. But basically, socialists respect the autonomy of children, and Простоквашино is a film about how children are autonomous beings who can be pretty competent given the correct environment and community. In the next scene, the trio eat a meal while discussing how they need to get money and milk. basically trying to make a business plan so they can stop being so broke. Matroskin recommends selling Sharik, and Fyodor is like, we're not selling anyone. So they go out and look for buried treasure, and I find this hilarious because, like, child labor is obviously bad, and socialists especially hate child labor. So instead of having this kid engage in child labor to make money, the writers were like, we will solve their economic problems by making them easily find buried treasure. Bam! No need for child labor. I kind of love that, honestly. As they head back with their buried treasure, they see Pyechkin chasing a bird who has stolen his Olympic ruble. Fyodor catches the bird, and Pyechkin is like, we need to send this bird to the polyclinic for experiments. And Fyodor is like, whoa, buddy, we're not doing that. I'm gonna take him in and teach him how to talk. That's right, we don't do carceral punishment here. We engage in restorative justice. That's praxis. That bird can't steal if he has better things to do. Also, here's your ruble back. Then we see the mom and dad discussing how their kid is missing, and the dad suggests that if they let kids have cats, they won't disappear. But the mom says, then the parents will start disappearing. This woman is so overworked and stressed out. I guess even socialist nations hadn't figured out how to reduce work-related stress in the 1970s yet. And this is a great way of critiquing that, honestly. Like, she is stressed out. The dad suggests putting a missing ad in the paper. In the next scene, Matroskin teaches the bird how to say, who's there? So if they're away, the bird can answer the door and make it seem like someone is home so they don't get robbed. Then in the scene after, the bird uses his newfound skill to annoy Pyechkin by repeatedly asking who's there when Pyechkin knocks on the door. It's a really funny scene, honestly. Pyechkin repeats himself so many times that when the bird knocks on the door and Pyechkin asks who's there, the bird repeats verbatim, it's me, Malin Pyechkin, I brought a newspaper about your boy. Это я, почтальон Pyechkin, принес газету о вашего мальчика. It's such a funny scene. Fyodor and Matroskin arrive and look at the newspaper, which clearly has a picture of their boy, Fyodor. He sighs sadly, and Matroskin is like, hey, don't worry, there's probably plenty of other missing boys with that description. Pyechkin says they don't give bicycles for every single one, though, and measures Fyodor. Then Dядя Fyodor starts writing a letter to his parents, but their new cow starts eating laundry in the backyard, so Fyodor runs away from his letter to go deal with that. And then Matroskin and Sharik both add on to the letter. So when the parents receive it and read it, it basically says, I live well, just excellent. I have everything. I have my own home. It's warm there. It has one room and a kitchen. I miss you, especially in the evenings, but my health isn't very good. Sometimes my paws hurt and my tail falls off, and by day, I start shedding. Old fur is falling off of me, but the new fur grows back silky and smooth, so my fluffiness has increased. Goodbye, your son, Uncle Shadik. And they're basically like, I guess we've both gone insane. It's also a very funny scene. This is a very funny cartoon. Pyechkin shows up and asks them if they're the ones giving a bicycle in exchange for a boy. Meanwhile, Uncle Fyodor is sick, which according to Shadik is from Matroskin giving him unrefrigerated milk. His parents arrive, along with Pyechkin, who now has a bike. He's like, look at what they've driven your son to do. We need to give them to the polyclinic for experiments, and then leaves. Fyodor's mom asks where the raspberries are, and Matroskin gives her a jar of raspberry jam, to which she responds with, wow, I didn't know cats could be that smart. I thought they just scream at trees. And Matroskin is like, I can also sew by hand and by machine. And she gives him pets, and he's a very happy boy about it. Haha, take that, Mom. Cats are good, actually. The next day, the parents of Fyodor say he's going back to the city with them, but he can take the cat or the dog. Both Sharik and Matroskin decide to stay in Prostokvashino, but say that Fyodor can come back and visit them for vacation or on weekends. They also give Fyodor the talking bird to take with him, and when his dad asks who that is, the bird says, it's me, Mailman Pyechkin, bringing the journal Murzilka. Look at him, he learned. Good for him. And the mom is like, oh, how uncomfortable. We forgot about Pyechkin. And Shadik is like, rightfully so, that guy sucks, he's nasty. And Pyechkin shows up and is like, excuse me, why was I nasty? It's because I didn't have a bike. And now I'm immediately nicer and will get myself an animal and it'll be more fun. And then he says, come visit us in Prostokvashino. And that's the end. Leave it to a Soviet children's cartoon to teach you about how systemic barriers that make it harder to do your job also make you so stressed out that it can be hard to be nice. And having your needs met makes it easier to be nicer. Older people who lived in the Soviet Union and who still miss it often say that one of the things they miss is the fact that people were generally kinder and that there was a sense of solidarity. It's literally true that a mode of production that relies on cooperation rather than exploitation and that aims to remove people's systemic barriers will create a generally nicer populace. That's why you think everyone's an asshole. Capitalism makes people into assholes and reactionaries. I love Простоквашино because not only is it very funny, but it also teaches us some really important things, like the fact that children have autonomy and can be competent at things in the right environment, that removing systemic barriers and meeting people's needs makes it easier to be nice to others, that you don't need to punish someone to correct their behavior and can instead educate them and redirect them towards a better pattern, and that friendship and solidarity are the most important thing. Conclusion. Чебурашка, бременские музыканты, Трое из Простоквашино. These three Soviet children's animated films all have something in common, aside from all being produced by Союзмультфильм. They all glorify solidarity, friendship, community, and working together for the common good to create a better world for everyone. They also handle conflict in a generally generative way, which I love. Like when Cheburashka and Gena get rejected by the pioneers and then encounter a bunch of hooligans running around getting themselves into danger, they channel their frustration and disappointment into helping their community. And the kids literally stop putting themselves in danger now that they have something better to do. When the bird steals Pechkin's coin, the trio return the coin and teach the bird how to talk so he won't feel compelled to steal more coins. The trio consider Pechkin a nuisance, but when he finally gets a bike, he immediately becomes nicer because a systemic barrier that was making his life harder has been lifted. When the traveling musicians find a bunch of robbers planning on robbing the king, they scare them off and then scare the king for their own benefit, but he's the monarchy, so who cares? And it's obviously a fate better than the one the robbers had planned for him. These animated films, cartoons, whatever you want to call them, teach us that stopping someone from doing something bad is as simple as redirecting them towards a better behavior or changing their material conditions. They also teach us that friendship and solidarity is the most important thing in the world, which is very in line with presenting conflict as generative and overall constructive rather than destructive. Because if you prioritize friendship, unity, and solidarity, you kind of have to be good at conflict resolution. This focus on solidarity and generative conflict as a means of achieving peace and justice really makes a lot of sense when you consider the fact that the first official act of the new Bolshevik government on November 8, 1917, the day the Bolsheviks took power, was to propose to all warring people and their governments to begin immediate negotiations for a just and democratic peace. Socialism, unlike capitalism, does not benefit from or incentivize war. Read Anna Louise Strong's The Soviets Expected It to learn more. It's like a really short book, and I don't know why this version I have is so JPEG, but it's really good. Read it. As a mode of production, socialism relies on cooperation rather than exploitation. So, of course, socialists glorify generative conflict and solidarity building as a means of achieving peace and making the world a better place. Also, if you're a socialist or a leftist or whatever and suck at conflict resolution on an interpersonal level, you gotta get real good right now. It's hard. But it's worth it to build the type of world we want to see, which, if you're anything like me, is very much like the world portrayed in these three cartoons. The world that the Soviet Union glorified in its animation and attempted to build. They are a beautiful expression of the socialist values that the Soviet Union aimed to embody and that we should also aim to embody as people fighting for a better world. Thanks for watching! If you've gotten this far, let me know what you think about the values glorified in children's media in your country, or leave me a set of animal emojis showing what animals you'd hang out with if you were in a Soviet cartoon, or both. This video was made possible by my wonderful patrons on Patreon! If you like my videos and want me to continue making them, consider joining for ad-free, uncensored videos, occasional behind-the-scenes content, and exclusive patrons-only videos that you can help pick. My latest one was about my niche criticisms of the Soviet Union. They're so incredibly niche that so far only one person has come close to vaguely guessing one of them, and not really even. You can also send me a one-time tip on Ko-fi or PayPal. Would you abandon your family and move to the countryside to go live with a cat you just met? Also, Cheburashka is a non-binary icon, and Matroskin is gay-coded, and everyone in Bременские музыканты is bisexual, and I am not debating this with anyone because I am gay and correct. Okay, bye!